We've all been there, disrespected, overlooked, maybe even hurt by someone's words or actions. And let me tell you something, in that moment, it's easy to want to rise up, to clap back, to let someone know exactly what you're thinking. But I want to challenge you today. What if the most powerful thing you can do when you face disrespect is to stay quiet? Silence holds an incredible power that many often overlook. In a world that thrives on constant noise, instant responses, and immediate reactions, silence has become an undervalued weapon. However, when used intentionally, silence becomes one of the most profound tools in our emotional and spiritual arsenal. It isn't simply the absence of sound or words. It is a strategic decision, a choice that communicates strength in ways words cannot. When you choose silence, you create space between the stimulus, the situation, or the disrespect, and your response. This space is where power is birthed. It's the gap where you can catch your breath, recalibrate your emotions, and refocus your thoughts. Too often, we react out of impulse, allowing emotions like anger, frustration, or hurt to dictate our responses. But in that moment of silence, we have the opportunity to let those emotions settle and not let them control us. Silence, when practiced in the face of disrespect, is not a sign of submission. On the contrary, it is a demonstration of inner strength and control. It's a refusal to be pulled into the chaos, a refusal to let someone else's words or actions dominate your sense of peace. While others may expect you to react or retaliate, your silence becomes a force they cannot easily interpret. You're not being passive or weak. You're being deliberate. In a world where everyone is quick to speak their mind, the person who can hold their tongue in a moment of provocation is the one who holds the upper hand. Moreover, silence often speaks louder than words ever could. In a heated exchange, words can become weapons, escalating the situation, adding fuel to an already burning fire. But silence has the power to de-escalate. It can throw cold water on the flames of conflict, giving everyone involved a chance to pause and reflect. When you refuse to engage in the same negative energy, you create a moment of stillness that disrupts the cycle of disrespect. There's also an undeniable wisdom in silence. Responding in the heat of the moment rarely leads to a productive outcome. When we speak too quickly, we often regret it later. But in silence, we give ourselves the time and space to reflect, to seek understanding, and to discern whether a response is necessary at all. Sometimes the best response is no response, and silence grants us the ability to make that decision with clarity. In addition, silence helps preserve your peace. Disrespect and hurtful words can easily disturb your sense of inner tranquility, but when you remain silent, you protect your peace from the turmoil that others may try to bring into your life. It is a conscious decision to refuse to allow someone else's actions to rob you of the calm that you've worked so hard to cultivate. The power of silence is not just external, it also impacts our internal world. It is in those quiet moments that we can reconnect with ourselves and with God, allowing His peace to flood our hearts and minds. When you don't allow disrespect to pull you into a verbal battle, you create space for divine guidance, wisdom, and comfort. Silence enables you to remain anchored when everything around you feels unstable, grounding you in your values, in your truth, and in your identity. How about control over reactions is one of the most powerful aspects of emotional intelligence, yet it is often overlooked in the heat of the moment. When faced with disrespect or provocation, our natural instinct may be to react quickly, perhaps out of pride, hurt, or a desire to defend ourselves. However, the true strength lies not in reacting impulsively, but in having the self-discipline to pause, assess, and then respond with intentionality. In the midst of being disrespected, the ability to control your reaction is a reflection of your emotional maturity and self-awareness. It's easy to respond with anger, to lash out, or to let frustration spill over into words or actions that we later regret. But the moment you let your emotions take the wheel, you hand over control of the situation. You allow your feelings to dictate the course of your actions instead of the other way around. Control over your reactions isn't about suppressing your emotions. It's about choosing to not let them dominate you. This kind of self-control is not something that comes naturally to everyone, and it certainly isn't easy. We live in a world where instant gratification is prioritized, where everyone feels the pressure to react quickly and respond in the moment. Social media, conversations, even conflicts are all driven by a sense of immediacy, of needing to have the last word, of needing to be heard right now. But in doing so, we often fail to recognize the consequences of our reactions. The rush to defend our dignity or prove ourselves often leads to deeper conflict, misunderstanding, and emotional distress. When we take a moment to control our reactions, we give ourselves the space to respond thoughtfully and with integrity. It's a deliberate choice to not let the actions or words of others dictate our emotional state. We maintain ownership of how we feel, and by doing so, we preserve our peace. It's crucial to understand that how we react to disrespect says more about us than it does about the person who disrespects us. Our reactions reflect our values, our priorities, and our level of emotional discipline. Responding with thoughtfulness rather than impulsivity communicates that we are in control, not just of the situation, but of ourselves. Moreover, when we control our reactions, we remove ourselves from the cycle of negativity that others may try to draw us into. People may act out of anger, jealousy, or insecurity, but when we refuse to mirror those emotions with similar responses, we break the cycle. We create an opportunity for the conversation to shift, for the energy to change, and for the situation to transform into something constructive rather than destructive. In moments of tension or disrespect, it's not always about winning the argument or proving a point. The goal should be to preserve your integrity and peace of mind. The way we react to conflict often determines the direction in which the relationship will go. When we control our reactions, we prevent the situation from spiraling out of control and keep the potential for resolution open. It also teaches others around us the importance of measured responses and the power of restraint. Control over reactions allows us to choose the kind of energy we bring into the world. We can respond with kindness, patience, and wisdom, no matter how we're treated, because we know that our emotional responses belong to us, and we choose how to express them. By holding back in the face of disrespect, we ultimately preserve not only our own dignity, but also the dignity of the relationship, demonstrating that we are capable of responding in ways that reflect who we truly are: calm, confident, and composed. Wisdom and retention is the ability to hold back, to wait, and to think before speaking or acting. In a culture that values immediacy and quick responses, the discipline of holding your words and actions can seem counterintuitive. We are often urged to speak our minds, to defend ourselves immediately when wronged, and to make our voices heard in the moment. However, there is profound wisdom in the ability to pause, to retain your words, and to allow time for clarity to emerge. When faced with disrespect or criticism, the impulse to react quickly is often overwhelming. We may feel that we need to defend ourselves or prove our worth, or that responding immediately will somehow restore our dignity. Yet this quick response rarely produces the outcomes we hope for. In fact, responding without thought can often escalate the situation, intensifying the conflict and leaving us with words we wish we could take back. This is where wisdom in retention comes into play. By choosing not to speak or act immediately, we create an opportunity to assess the situation with clarity. It's in those quiet moments that we have the space to filter out the noise, to step back from our emotions, and to allow our minds and hearts to guide us toward a more measured response. Retention isn't about avoiding confrontation or passively accepting disrespect. It's about gathering the strength to not allow our emotions to control us. It's about waiting for wisdom to rise within us, knowing that a hasty reaction is rarely the best course of action. When we retain our words, we also retain our dignity. The act of withholding a reaction can be a powerful statement of self-control and emotional maturity. It is a demonstration that we are not easily swayed by the momentary sting of disrespect, and that we value our peace and integrity more than the immediate satisfaction of defending ourselves. Retaining our words doesn't mean we are weak or passive. It means we are wise enough to recognize that not every battle is worth fighting in the moment. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. Furthermore, wisdom in retention allows us to process the situation fully. In the heat of an argument or a moment of disrespect, our emotions often cloud our judgment. We might say things we don't mean or fail to consider the long-term impact of our words. But when we hold back, we give ourselves the time to reflect on what is truly important. We are able to evaluate the situation without being driven by immediate feelings. This pause allows us to reflect on whether the disrespect is worth addressing, if a response is necessary, or if silence might be the most powerful tool at our disposal. Retaining our words also allows for a deeper level of discernment. It gives us the space to seek guidance from our values, our faith, or our intuition. In moments of tension, this pause can become a form of spiritual or personal alignment. We no longer react out of ego, but we act in accordance with what we know to be true, what aligns with our deeper purpose and understanding. In this way, retention leads to a more intentional and impactful response. Often, the wisdom gained in retention reveals that what we initially thought required a response may not need one at all. Sometimes, time shows us that the situation wasn't as critical as we initially perceived, or that the person who disrespected us was acting out of their own pain or insecurity. By retaining our words, we allow the situation to unfold in its own time. And in doing so, we avoid making rash decisions that we would later regret. God's timing is one of the most profound concepts we can embrace in our lives, yet it is often one of the hardest to trust. In moments of disrespect, when we feel wronged or misunderstood, our natural instinct is to react immediately, to speak out, to defend ourselves, to set the record straight. However, God's timing invites us to pause and trust that there is a greater purpose unfolding, one that doesn't require us to rush or control the situation. When we surrender to God's timing, we acknowledge that there is a divine plan at work that goes beyond our immediate understanding. In the heat of a moment of disrespect, it can feel like everything is spiraling out of control. We may feel the urgent need to address the wrong we've been dealt, but God's timing teaches us to wait, to take a step back, and to let things unfold according to His plan. His timing isn't bound by our own expectations or frustrations. He sees the bigger picture, the beginning and the end, and His timing is always perfect, even when we can't see it. Trusting in God's timing means understanding that some battles don't need to be fought in the moment. Sometimes God calls us to wait for the right time to speak, to act, or to respond. If we react prematurely, driven by our emotions or pride, we may miss the opportunity to respond in a way that brings healing, growth, or reconciliation. When we trust God's timing, we embrace the truth that there is a season for everything, a time to speak and a time to remain silent, a time to act and a time to pause. God's timing isn't always aligned with our own. We often want immediate answers, swift resolution, and instant justice when we feel wronged. But the truth is, there is a deep strength in waiting for God's timing because it removes the pressure from us to fix everything right away. In those moments of tension, waiting doesn't mean passivity. It means choosing to trust that God is working behind the scenes, orchestrating things in ways that we cannot fully comprehend in the moment. When we choose to wait on God's timing, we are reminded that vengeance, defense, and judgment are His to carry out, not ours. The Bible teaches us that vengeance belongs to God, and in trusting His timing, we release the need to take matters into our own hands. In moments of disrespect, it can be easy to want to retaliate or prove a point, but when we trust in God's timing, we remember that He is the ultimate judge and that He will make things right in His perfect time. This allows us to experience a peace that transcends the situation at hand, knowing that God is faithful to handle what we cannot. Amen. God's timing also teaches us the value of patience and endurance. Waiting on God to move doesn't mean we are passive observers in our lives. It means we are active participants, trusting that the lessons and growth we experience while waiting are just as important as the resolution itself. God uses these waiting periods to refine our character, to build our strength, and to prepare us for what's to come. In trusting His timing, we align ourselves with His purpose and surrender to the process that He is using to shape us into the person we are meant to be. In the moments of disrespect, when we feel the pressure to react quickly, God's timing reminds us that there is always a purpose in the pause. The delay isn't a denial. It is an opportunity for growth, trust, and transformation. Preserving peace is one of the most vital aspects of living a fulfilling and purposeful life. In a world where conflict, disagreement, and disrespect are prevalent, the ability to maintain inner peace and protect our sense of calm becomes a powerful act of resilience. It is easy to be swept away by the tides of negativity, especially when faced with disrespect or hostility. However, the act of preserving peace isn't about avoiding conflict or pretending that everything is fine. It's about choosing to safeguard your inner tranquility in the midst of turbulence. When we face disrespect, our natural response is often to defend ourselves, to stand up for our dignity, and to fight back against the insult. It's easy to let anger or frustration take over and react with words or actions that only perpetuate the conflict. However, in doing so, we allow the other person's behavior to control our emotional state. Our peace, which is meant to be an internal foundation, becomes subject to external circumstances. This is where the choice to preserve peace becomes crucial. Preserving peace is about making a conscious decision not to let the actions or words of others disturb your emotional equilibrium. It is not about suppressing your feelings or ignoring the wrong that has been done to you. Instead, it is about recognizing that while you cannot control other people's behavior, you do have control over how you respond. The ability to preserve peace in difficult situations lies in choosing not to let external forces dictate your internal world. One of the most effective ways to preserve peace is to practice restraint. When disrespected, the urge to react can be overwhelming. But in those moments, taking a step back, remaining silent, and taking time to process the situation can prevent a hasty response that would escalate the tension. Often, when we respond out of anger, we say things we regret or contribute to a cycle of negativity that leaves both parties feeling worse. By holding back, we break that cycle and avoid further disturbance to our peace. Preserving peace also means protecting our mental and emotional health. Every conflict we engage in, every negative interaction we allow ourselves to be drawn into can take a toll on our well-being. Constantly battling external conflict leaves little room for peace and growth within ourselves. By choosing to let go of the need to argue or confront, we preserve the space in our hearts for clarity, compassion, and understanding. It's an investment in our own emotional resilience, one that allows us to navigate life's challenges without being undone by every wave of negativity. So, another aspect of preserving peace is practicing forgiveness. When we hold on to anger, grudges, or resentment after being disrespected, we allow the other person to continue to disrupt our peace, even after the incident is past. Forgiveness doesn't mean we condone the disrespect or ignore the hurt. It means we release the hold it has on us. In choosing forgiveness, we free ourselves from the chains of bitterness and resentment that only poison our peace and cloud our ability to move forward. Furthermore, preserving peace involves prioritizing relationships over being right. In many situations, the desire to be justified or to prove a point can lead us down a path of unnecessary conflict. However, when we choose to preserve peace, we recognize that relationships are more important than winning an argument. Sometimes the best way to preserve peace in a relationship is to let go of the need to be right and instead focus on understanding and maintaining harmony. It is in those moments that we show the strength of our character and the depth of our commitment to the well-being of others. Ultimately, preserving peace is not about avoiding challenges or pretending that everything is fine. It's about choosing to maintain our integrity, our composure, and our inner calm in the face of adversity. It's about recognizing that peace is not something we have to chase externally, but something that we must protect and nurture within ourselves. When we preserve peace, we create a sanctuary in our hearts where we can rest, reflect, and grow, regardless of the storm raging outside. Victory in restraint is one of the most profound yet often misunderstood forms of strength. In a world that celebrates instant responses, quick reactions, and the need to prove ourselves in the moment, restraint is a quiet but powerful choice to hold back and resist the urge to act impulsively. It is not a sign of weakness or passivity. Rather, it is a demonstration of emotional intelligence, self-discipline, and deep inner strength. When we are faced with disrespect, our natural inclination is often to respond, to fight back, to defend ourselves, to make sure the other person knows exactly what we think of them. But true victory lies not in immediate reaction, but in choosing to restrain ourselves in those critical moments. When we choose restraint, we are choosing to not allow our emotions, egos, or pride to dictate our actions. Instead, we take a step back and allow wisdom, self-control, and maturity to guide us. Restraint doesn't mean that we don't feel anger, frustration, or hurt in the face of disrespect. These emotions are natural and valid responses to being wronged. However, victory in restraint comes from choosing not to allow those emotions to drive our actions. It's a conscious decision to pause, reflect, and let the initial rush of emotion subside before we act. This moment of restraint is where strength is found. In choosing to hold back, we preserve our dignity, maintain our peace, and avoid saying or doing something we will later regret. One of the most powerful aspects of restraint is the victory it brings over our own impulses. In our culture, we are often encouraged to act on our feelings, to speak our minds, and to always stand up for ourselves. While there is a time and place for assertiveness, restraint teaches us that not every battle is worth fighting, and not every slight requires a response. In the heat of the moment, restraint gives us the ability to step outside of our emotions and choose how we want to react. It's a victory over our instinct to lash out, over the temptation to defend our pride, or seek validation in the immediate aftermath of an insult. Moreover, victory in restraint doesn't just protect us from saying the wrong thing, it also preserves our relationships. When we refrain from responding in anger or frustration, we create space for understanding and resolution. Reacting impulsively often deepens the divide, causing the other person to feel attacked and escalating the conflict further. But when we practice restraint, we avoid fueling the fire and instead allow room for dialogue, healing, and growth. It is through restraint that we often find the wisdom and the right words to address the situation in a way that fosters peace rather than division. But the struggle within, in addition, victory in restraint teaches us the importance of emotional regulation. Our emotions, while valid, do not have to control our actions. Restraint is a reminder that we are not slaves to our feelings, but are empowered to respond with thoughtfulness and intentionality. By exercising restraint, we choose not to let fleeting emotions dictate our behavior, but instead act in alignment with our values and long-term goals. Restraint is a victory over the urge to react in a way that is out of alignment with who we truly are, and a choice to respond with the wisdom, grace, and strength that reflect our deepest convictions. Finally, the victory found in restraint is not just external, it's internal. When we resist the urge to react impulsively, we cultivate peace within ourselves. We grow in our ability to maintain composure, to hold on to our sense of self-worth, and to preserve our emotional well-being. Restraint brings about a deep sense of freedom. a freedom from the need to prove ourselves, from the pressure to respond in every situation, and from the burden of living reactively. Instead, we begin to live proactively, guided by purpose and anchored in peace, knowing that true victory comes not from winning every argument or getting the last word, but from the ability to choose restraint in the face of disrespect. In life, we are often confronted with disrespect and conflict, but how we respond defines us. By embracing silence, controlling our reactions, practicing wisdom in retention, trusting God's timing, preserving our peace, and finding victory in restraint, we demonstrate strength, maturity, and emotional intelligence. These principles remind us that true power lies not in reacting impulsively, but in choosing to respond thoughtfully and with purpose. When we choose to live in alignment with these values, we protect our peace, foster growth, and reflect the kind of strength that transcends every moment of disrespect or challenge we face.